Well,
It was a sad deal.
there was kind of a quick turnaround in regards to the promotions in that area, and Randy Greenman came in and kind of filled. Those were big shoes to fill. Obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the totality of the fights that you've had in your hometown, and Randy Greenman steps in with reality submission fighting.
Right.
Would you mind expanding a little bit on your thoughts and feelings about Randy Greenman? Because this is another tragic story. It's almost like there's a curse on the promoters from that area. Like I would highly suggest no one, promote events in Collinsville and Belleville based on, the totality of these two promoters.
Yeah, it was a sad deal, but getting into, I knew Randy and I were good friends, and he would hire me all the time to personal train him, and Randy loved the sport and was a very, very good at everything that he did with the sport. But Randy also, he played on the other side of the law, and when you do stuff like that, it catches up to you. Again, where I mentioned my arrogance and my cockiness, I'm surprised I'm still alive, because I used to hang out with Randy all the time. He'd come pick me up. I rented a house from him. We'd go out to eat all the time. And the kid who was killed with him, I guess, was a friend of his that he had met up at a bar, and then they stopped by
wrong place, wrong time kind of thing.
Yeah, right. And they both ended up dead with their heads cut off, and I would sit there and think, damn, I mean, tough as you are, it doesn't matter. They pull a gun and you're done, so.
But do you know a little bit? I mean, everyone that was involved in that's in prison right now.
Right.
Would you mind if I expand on it? Or
sure.
Would you be able? So from what I gather, Randy was into the clubs and stuff like that of, Southern Illinois, and hung out with a bunch of bikers, because Randy had like a bigger than life type personality. And if there's one thing that I know that guy loved, it was the catch wrestling styles of Judo Gene LaBelle. That highest stand style, he would lose his mind over.
Absolutely.
And met up with a bunch of bikers. One of the head guys, from what I gather, went to jail federally, and he never told on anybody. He just ate it, which, there's a lot of honor in that.
Right.
And pretty much gave the business to Randy and said, hey, when I come out, things are going to, it's mine again. Am I off on any of this so far?
No, this is what I've heard too. So far, yeah, you're 100% is what I've heard.
So this guy gets out of jail after 6 or 7 years, and federal time, there's usually, it's one of those, it's pretty hard to get extended sentences when you plead guilty immediately. Like if you string them along and treat it like a local case, that's when you get like Rod Blagojevich just slammed for big time. But if you just go in there and say, hey man, I did it, let me take my time, they give you actually, they're very reasonable with their sentences, and this guy falls into that category. He gets out of jail. Him and Randy have a discussion. At this time, Randy's he's one of those guys that's like showing the $1 million tagline around. Like, yeah, I'm thinking about buying this club for $1 million. I'm thinking about buying a yacht for $1 million. He loved throwing that $1 million tagline around, because in essence, what he was doing is he'd have these incredible shows in Belleville, Illinois. He had Carol Parisian fight Sean Shirk twice. He had Monville Gambarian on there. He's got Steve Berger on there. Chris Lytle, Pete Spratt. Like the fights that this guy was doing were UFC quality cards. Some of the fights that were on there.
I was going to say, I don't know. I didn't run across Randy Greenman. I did know Madden. But if I had to compare them, Madden was a more typical promoter in that his interest started with the show, the money, and then also to promote his guys, Jerry Miller, Ventimiglia, Jermaine Andre, CJ Fernandez, like especially when Jermaine was, showing some promise, like that was his guy, and that was the show. Whereas Randy did put together fanboy fights, like money wasn't really the object.
No,
he just did it out of love, kind of more like me, kind of thing. Like,
and he would
that's exactly right.
He would pack a venue and you'd be like, oh man, he did really good today. And then you'd look at the card and you go, no way, man, he lost money. So what he would do is he would pretty much, I'm not going to say wash, because there's no way he was washing money through that event. Essentially what he was doing is that was his, like, instead of going to Vegas and wasting a bunch of money at the craps tables, he flew in all of his favorite fighters to Southern Illinois. So when this guy gets out of prison, Miguel, they have a conversation where the guy goes, okay, well, it's mine again. And Randy goes, well, the business was this big when he gave it to me, and now it's like that big. We're going to have to talk about this. Like the deal is absolutely going to change. And
that's 100% right. Randy had, obviously he took it at one point, and I forget what the years were, but over those years, he had made a lot of other connections. He had really brought it up and all that. And then I guess when this guy came back, hey, this was the deal. They had a falling out over it. But Randy, funny thing is, this was like Randy's best friend. The guy was like the best man or Randy was the best man at this guy's wedding, and so it's just funny the way it worked out. But I guess at some point, it got to be where the guy was like, okay, that's fine. That's cool. Well, it wasn't. And, obviously, you know what happened, and, rough deal.
Yeah, I'm hoping to check out with my head still attached.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.